Hello everyone. Today we'll be kayak fishing on Fur Lake. To get there, we'll go north on Highway 12, crossing the North Saskatchewan River using the Petrovka Bridge, heading toward the town of Blaine Lake. Continuing straight through town will keep us on Highway 12, which we will drive all the way to its end, near Shell Lake. We'll turn right on Highway 3 and continue east for a few kilometers. Next, a left on Range Road 3071, and finally, a right down an interesting dirt road leads us to Fur Lake. As a kayak angler, there are certain things I look for in a lake. Things like a small surface area, an inflow, an outflow, and some places with depth. All of which this lake has. And with these stats, Fur Lake earns the score 9 out of 10, and therefore a must-see for kayak anglers. So by the second weekend in May, I decided I had to check it out. The stage is set, the cameras are rolling, and we're ready to explore Fur Lake. The only issue, it's getting dark, and the sun is about to set. Once the sun starts to touch the trees there, we're going to call it a day, so we don't have very long. Using the two-finger method, we're at about 30 minutes at most. What I just tried to describe is a method for measuring how long until the sun sets using only your hands. And with the official sunset only 10 minutes off, it seems to work pretty well. In other words, it's time to hurry up and get fishing. After no bites, I wanted to see how visible my lure is, and it seems it's very visible. Regardless, I'm going to switch it up for the last few minutes. And the new spoon seems to be working better.
Come on, tell me I got that one. No, nothing.
Although not good enough.
Yeah, that was a fish.
Once the sun starts to touch the trees, it's time to head back. We'll make our way to shore, which would be a nice place to camp if it wasn't for these signs. Now, I'm sure that every sign has a story, and seeing as there's two, I bet it's a good one. Regardless, we'll have to make our way to Memorial Lake, the nearest campground where we will spend the night. In our downtime, let's have a look at the to-do list for this weekend. 1. See the inflow for Fur Lake. 2. See the outflow for Fur Lake. And 3. Catch a fish. It's a pretty simple weekend. The next morning, we will make the same drive back to Fur Lake for another day of fishing. Once we get there, we will see the lake is very calm. Perfect. So we'll set off and begin crossing the lake. I'm going to try this new lure, and near this hill seemed like a good spot.
That's a fish. There we go. Just an itsy bitsy guy. Fish.
After we catch a fish there, it's clearly a great spot, but it's time to move along. We'll go around the hill, making our way through the first narrows. This brings us to the smallest section of Fur Lake, which we will troll our way across. During that, I managed to catch this faucet snail. Next, we'll come across the second narrows. It has its own little bay, and there used to be a rail bridge across the narrowing. It also looks like a good spot to fish. Because it is a good spot to fish.
There we go. Fish. Yeah, here we go.
After 3 bites in a row, it's time to move along. We'll paddle through the second narrows and make our way toward the inflow for this lake. Where the river meets the lake, I managed to catch another fish in a neat way.
Gotcha.
We'll continue to cast our way upstream until we reach a beaver dam. This will be as far upriver as we can go. I have mixed feelings about beaver dams. On one hand, they're a pain in the butt and hard to cross. On the other hand, they do a nice job visualizing the flow of a river. Because this is the only main inflow for this lake, we'll know we're looking for roughly this much water flowing out. On the way back, I tried to visualize the flow of water on the way to Fur Lake. As we approach the lake, we will see one of the coolest beaver lodges I've ever seen. It's built into a tree on the edge of the inflow. We will now cross the lake and check out the outflow for Fur Lake. To get there, we'll have to enter a shallow bay through one of 2 narrow openings. Now we just clearly saw how much water flows into this lake, but it's much harder to see it flowing out. It's worth noting that this lake isn't being held up by a dam, and therefore we're looking at the natural outflow for Fur Lake. There's not much else to see in this area, so let's head back toward the second narrows. It happens to be an old railway line that used to connect Mont Nebo to Shell Lake. This used to be the bridge. It also happens to be a pretty good fishing spot, as we found out earlier. We'll make our way back to the first narrows, which we will paddle through and cast our way back to shore. Next, we will drive back to Memorial Lake, where we will spend the rest of our day. There's a lot for one to do in the nearby town of Shell Lake, or don't. There's also a full lake that you can explore, just in time to watch the sunset. The next morning, I'm back at Fur Lake for one last day on the water. I decided I wanted to see the outflow one last time. I felt like I missed something. So I made my way there, stopping at all the good spots along the way. And the fish seem to have learned their lesson at the second narrows. Once again, we will pass through the remains of the old train bridge on our way to the outflow. We will enter the shallow bay for a second time, with the goal of seeing if I can go any further than yesterday. But it doesn't look like I can. It's just too shallow, even for a kayak. Okay, now I'm sure I've seen the outflow. Let's cross the lake and try to catch some fish. We'll catch one pike. And follow that up by catching another pike in a similar area.
There it is. That's right.
Next, we'll cast our way through both narrows and paddle our way back to shore. This will conclude the time that we spend at Fur Lake. Thanks for joining on this weekend's episode of the Lakes, Rivers, and Dams of Saskatchewan. Don't forget to join next weekend. Thanks for watching.